So we are here on this class, Bereshit, the beginning of a new year. Unfortunately, the beginning of this new year did not start as we always would like for the year to start on a joyful note. Coming off a very difficult Simchas Torah. And everybody is familiar. We don't have to repeat anything. I'm not going to share anything.
Я сейчас кино хочу помастить.
I'm sure people heard all kinds of stories.
Что сделала? Ну, что-то говорить такое
You
хочу
can
послушать.
mute yourself, everybody, so it doesn't disturb the other people. Thank you. And, hello. Hello, guys. Whoever is there, can you please mute yourself? Oh, thank you. Okay, so basically, we are, this Shabbat is called Shabbat Bereshit. Bereshit is the Shabbat that comes right after Simchas Torah. And they are really connected to Simchas Torah. I once heard from my wife's grandfather, Mr. Weiss, of blessed memory. He used to always travel to the Rebbe for Simchas Torah. He used to travel many times. But Simchas Torah was one of the occasions that he used to travel to the Rebbe. And that year, particularly, I think Simchas Torah was like maybe Shabbat or Sunday, Monday. And then Tuesday night, before he went back home, he was planning to get into a private audience with the Rebbe. It was called Yechidut. And this is 1978. This is Tafshin Lamed Tes. So he's private to go into a private audience. He lived in California, in Los Angeles. So for the last holiday, he had a good arrangement with his wife. The grandmother was spending the last day of the holiday in Miami. He went to New York to the Rebbe, and he was planning to go on the way back, be in Miami for the weekend, maybe for Shabbat, and then go home together with his wife. And when he was standing in line, he saw an individual who used to come also to visit the Rebbe on the holidays, a Jew from Mexico. His last name was actually Shabbos. That was his familiar name. So they kind of spoke for a minute, and Mr. Shabbos looked a little agitated. So he asked him, everything okay? So he says, look, I have a flight to Mexico tonight. The line is a little longer than I expected, and I'm not sure if I'm going to make it to my flight if I have to end up waiting in line till my turn comes. So you can imagine Mr. Weiss got involved, and he convinced everybody to let Mr. Shabbos to go in front of the line so he can make it to his flight. And Mr. Shabbos walks out of the Rebbe's room. He came over to Mr. Weiss and he gives him a big thank you, and he says, the Rebbe told me to come back for Shabbat Bereshit. Now this is Tuesday night. So I'm going home to Mexico, but I'm going to be back here for Shabbos. Later that evening, Mr. Weiss goes into the Rebbe for his private audience. And he tells the Rebbe, I was planning to travel to Miami and then take my wife to go back to Los Angeles. But Mr. Shabbos told me that the Rebbe said to be back here for Shabbos Bereshit. So the Rebbe looks at Mr. Weiss and he says, you don't leave before Shabbos Bereshit. Or meaning to say, for Shabbos Bereshit, you're staying here just like the way for Simchas Torah. Basically, the idea is that Shabbos Bereshit is always considered a continuation for Simchas Torah. Matter of fact, the custom in many communities, Arnold, I want you to hear it, is the one who got Chosan Bereshit and Chosan Torah would sponsor the Kiddush, the Shabbos after Simchas Torah. So what happens is Bereshit is a general Parsha. Obviously, it's the beginning of all Parshas. But the message of Bereshit is a very general message, just like everything that we celebrate in this month of Tishrei is general, is a general, by nature of the general theme, whether it's coronating God as a king, or repentance and atonement, or joy. The month of Tishrei is called a month which is a general month, a month which is not only celebrating or observing specific mentioning of holidays, like to remember that we left Egypt, like on Passover, or to remember that we got the Torah, or the miracle of Hanukkah. It's meant to fill us with inspiration and guidance for the rest of the year. And the ideas that we discuss during this month is obviously all ideas which are midat nature. Bereshit, by nature, the fact that you understand that the world was created by God, I think that puts everything in perspective. If the world has a creator, then the world has a purpose. And if there is a purpose, then there is, you know, why you're here. At least you know what to search for. Why am I here? But if there is no Bereshit, if there is no world created by God, the whole thing is a random accident of some, explosion that brought about this amazing world. So why? What matters? What happens anyway? I mean, no, there's no plan. There's no master plan. There is no creator. Jewish people begin life with the fact that the world was created by God. Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. God created the heavens and earth, and if He created it, He must have an idea what He wants. And if He created it, and especially the way He created it, which allows us to understand that creation needs to continuously being supported and sustained and perhaps recreated by God. But God is always here. He always has a reason why the world exists. And that obviously gives us the big lesson which we need to internalize, and we're very proud to share as Jews, that the world is not a jungle. The world is not a jungle. If there is no creator, then it's a jungle. You go and you kill and you destroy and you demolish. Who cares? But Bereshit Bor Elikim, you're accountable. He did it. What was his reason? What did he want? Why are we here? If I disagree with someone, let's see what I can accept, what I cannot accept, what I have to fight for, what I cannot fight for. But what we saw and we see, unfortunately, ongoingly in the last week, is clearly a demonstration of a bunch of terrorists, which clearly the message is that there is no creator. There is no master plan. It's just going to destroy, to kill little babies, pregnant women, elderly. That doesn't come when you believe in a God. Wars are wars. Killing for the sake of killing and slaughtering there's no excuse for it. It can only come from one place. It can come from a person which doesn't have a God. And whatever they try to write, the God they pray for, there is no God they pray for. It doesn't exist. It's all a bunch of, I don't even want to use the word, people say animals. Why should we embarrass the animals? I think the animals are nicer than them. This is not animals. This is terrorists who acted in a barbaric manner. This is the modern day Nazis, the Machshimam. This is ISIS. This is all, it's one group of people, and they should never be recognized, and they should be erased from the face of the earth. And hopefully Israel is going to have the strength and the support from the world around. So far, so good. But we saw that even in America, President Biden got up, and the way he spoke, with no hesitation, with no stumbling on his words, very clear, very crystal clear, as he says, that there is no reason to hold back Israel to do what they need to do. But Hashem should help that our Jewish brothers and sisters in Israel should have the courage to do what they need to do. These kind of people need to be wiped out from the face of the earth. You can quote me, Rabbi Farkash, in Bellevue, Washington. A question on what? I didn't say anything yet.
It's not only Hamas, it's a massive amount of other organizations. Gil and Hezbollah and goes on and on. So I think now after events in Israel, several countries like England and France and the United States figure out that it's just a matter of time before.
Possible. Look, I am a very, very untalented person when it comes to politics and understand how the world works. And because I don't understand it, I would rather leave it aside for now, especially it's a Parsha class.
Okay.
I only mention it because this is on our chest, and we have to mention it. And I don't want. I want to be clear in something which I'm clear, and thank God to see that not only the Jewish people are clear, that the Gentile world is also very clear with that message. And whoever is not clear, let them go to hell too.
I saw a very, very inspiring video because, as you know, I'll just go back to this for 1 second. They're about to go in, right?
We don't know. We'll find out.
No, they're about to go in because they're getting ready. But I saw video, they were preparing taliyot, tanim, for all the soldiers to put on as body armor for everybody.
I saw that.
Religious, secular, and they're all
whatever
putting
works.
it on.
They're all wearing it.
And you see them dancing.
I didn't see it.
And you see them dancing in that area. More than 50% of them have got people.
Nice. Listen, it is. It's a Am Yisrael is a very very strong nation and a very determined nation, and let's hope that this moment shall continue not only for now. Now they need it for the war, but let's hope that the inspiration. Always my fear is, what's going to happen to this inspiration? We haven't so united, so on the same page. Is it what's not my fear? Like I'm always like my hope. Like is there like a wonder tool that can continue it for years to come, and not only with war, but maybe with peace, maybe with unity. Not easy, not easy. But anyway, let me go into what I want to talk about. I want to talk about Cain and Abel. Bereshit has a lot of stories because this week's Parsha alone is 10 generations being discussed in a very small Parsha. From the beginning of creation till the birth of Noah. So I just choose one story that I would like to discuss, some insight to it, and also to make it relevant to our situation of this week's. It is chapter 4 in the book of Bereshit. We have a world now, and the world has 4 people. 4 people is the entire universe. What do you think on a world like this? Take a look, verse 1 and verse 2. Adam yoda es Chava ishtoi, vatal vatera the Cain. There is Adam and there is Chava. Now, Adam, man who his wife Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain. Vatoimer, and she said, "Oh, kanisi ish es Hashem. I have acquired. Kaniti is the word Cain. I have acquired a man as a partner with God, because we realize not just me and him. There's a soul, and the soul is coming not from the sperm and not from the egg. The soul is coming from a higher power, and this is God. Kanisi ish es Hashem." And doesn't go. She was a Hasidic woman. There was no family planning, so the Torah says right away, Vatosef laledet es achiv, es Havel. She gave birth again to his brother Abel, and now we have 4 people in the universe. Doesn't take long. Only 4 people. One gets assassinated. This is the first assassination recorded in history. Murder. Not assassinated. Why not?
Different concept, but the end result is the same.
The first murder in creation. Okay, the professor will explain another time.
Yeah.
My English teacher, one of the English teachers, but he gets murdered, and when Abel gets murdered, it means, in simple terms, just to put it in perspective, 25% of the universe is dead. 25%. 25% is a lot. Imagine in today's society, 25% would be many millions.
Billion.
Well,
Billion.
billion. So you have 25% of the universe, a quarter of the universe is gone. And the reason for that murder is really something which is so unexplainable for the simple eye, for the naked eye, as they say. Because the Torah tells us exactly what happened. Let's read it quickly. Verse 3. First of all, they have their job prescriptions regarding Abel. Abel says the Torah was a shepherd, a flock. Okay? That's what he did. Cain, says the Torah, Oved Adama, he was working of the land. So you have a farmer and you have a shepherd. This is they always got jobs. Okay? They were nice Jewish boys. They were ready to take whatever job was available. So one became a shepherd and one became a farmer. I guess there was no need for lawyers yet. Doesn't go by much time, says verse 3, Vayihi Miketz Yamim, it was at the end of a number of days that Cain brought of the worst fruit of the land as an offering to God. Abel also offered from the firstborn of his flock, from their fattiest ones. The one is bringing the least qualitative gift, and one is bringing the most qualitative gift, quality of gifts. And lo and behold, as if God doesn't have enough, and as if it matters, says the Torah, yes. Verse 4. What happens on verse 4? God turns to Abel and to his offering. And turns means that the offering was consumed by a fire from heaven. That was the sign of an acceptable offering. We have it later also in history, when the fire descends and consumes the offering of other similar stories in later years in the temple, the prophets, and so on. But to Cain and to his offering, he did not turn. And Cain became very angry, and his face grew dejected. So you see clearly the reason. The reason has to do with the fact that God did not turn to his offering. And as Cain's face gets dejected, he feels like kind of upset and sorry. Vayomer Hashem el Cain. So Hashem says to Cain, Lama charaloch, why are you angry? And Veloma naflu panecha, and why is your face rejected? Which is interesting, just as a small Hasidic observation. God obviously has an issue with Cain. He does not accept his offering. At the same time, when he sees him being upset, he does go over and say, what's going on? What upsets you? In other words, he doesn't just let him be upset. Offering is the offering. As they say in English, don't mix business with pleasure. Somebody wronged you, he wronged you. and you have every right maybe to deal with the consequences of what he had wronged you. But at the same time, it's very normal when you hear that he's in a situation to go over and say, "How can I help you?" It doesn't mean that I forget what we had done earlier, but it's okay also to ask you what's going on and why does your face look like that. You have to remember the Rebbe once spoke very beautifully that the whole salvation of the Jewish people in Egypt started by Yosef. And what got Yosef to the place which he became Yosef is when he saw a sad face in prison and he asked him, why is your face sad? And it's not very unusual to be a prisoner and to feel sad, especially if you were in a position of a minister, especially if you're the minister of baking in the butler, this is a position that makes you really happy and popular. Everybody wants to be a friend of the chef, right? And the person in charge of the vodka. And it's normal to see them in prison and having that dejected face, as they say. But Yosef somehow felt that, no, I know you're upset, but I'm going to ask you why you're upset. Maybe something else is bothering you. And the Rebbe pointed out that that led the whole story of the Exodus. Because once he asked him why you sad, what was the response? I had a dream. And what was the dream? Okay, let me help you with the dream. And that's how the whole thing evolved later. So always, always, always pay attention to the dejected faces. You can never know what great deal of salvation we can accomplish by helping them. Okay, the story continues. Let's skip a verse or two. Let's go to verse 8. Cain is upset. Cain were together with his brother in the field, and when they were in the field, says the Torah, Vayokom Cain elevel achi vayargeihu. Cain assaulted Abel, his brother, and killed them. That's it. First murder. 25% of the universe is gone. And then comes the consequences for Cain. This is the story. This is the story. So much to learn from the story, so much discussion on the story. You can imagine through the ages by our commentators, by our classic commentators. I want to share with you tonight, first of all, a very interesting recorded footnotes of a speech. Footnotes of a speech that was given in New York in 1942. Not so many years ago. 1942, the 5th of Av, they established the Chevra Kadisha of the Chabad Hasidic movement in America. Basically, that year, 2 years earlier, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe arrived in the United States. That was in the month of Adar, 1940. He was able to escape Warsaw after September 1939. He was in Warsaw by the bombings. And because he had a Latvian citizenship, after he was sent out of Russia, he was living in Riga. So with the whole maneuvering, there's a whole book written about it. There were a lot of bribery, and even some Germans were involved in sneaking him through with ambulances all the way across the border into Latvia. So the Frierdiker Rebbe and his wife and his mother, he had an elderly mother, Rebbe Sterner Sarah. I think she became, the Rebbe's wife became deaf from the bombings of that September 1939 in Warsaw. He made it to Riga, but from Riga, they realized that they have to move further, and he came out to America in March of 1940. one of the last sheep, maybe the last sheep. And his mother lives with him. 1942, in January, his mother, the Rebbe Tzemsterner Sarah, which was the wife of the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, passed away in New York. And at that time, they realized that our people are going to pass on, so we have to establish a Chabad community cemetery. So they purchased on the Queens Montefiore Cemetery in Queens a section which was called the Chabad section. That's the way cemeteries are usually divided by communities, by synagogues, and onward. So there is a section which is, unfortunately, since then, very much populated by Chabad Hasidim, including the previous Rebbe, including the Rebbe's Rebbe Tzemchai Mushka, including the Rebbe's mother, Rebbe Tzemchana, and including the Rebbe himself, which is known as the Ohel. Is all in that very same cemetery, which was purchased in 1942. When they established the Chevra Kadisha, cemetery is not enough. You have to have a Chevra Kadisha, which is called the Burial Society, or translated literally as the Holy Society. They made a Chevra Kadisha for Chabad. So the Rebbe spoke, he gave a speech. And after the Rebbe's passing, they found in one of the drawers a big book of very tiny little letters of footnotes that the Rebbe wrote while being in Europe, while being in Sorbonne, while running to the sheep in Vichy, while coming in America the first years. He wrote footnotes. Here is I give you a glimpse into those writings. Very small letters, dated, and different occasions. And they decided, the Rebbe was in charge to, after the Rebbe's passing, to print it and to publish it. And we got a number of books, volumes, many volumes of books from those manuscripts. So one of them is a speech which was given when they established the Chevra Kadisha of Chabad in New York. And the Rebbe says something very, very interesting and something very, very important. First, he talks about Chevra Kadisha, and he says, where is it the first time in Jewish history that we find the service of Chevra Kadisha? Mm-hmm. So he brings, it happens when Cain murdered Abel. Says the Medrash, very interesting Medrash. And you're going to see soon how important the Medrash is into our week today. The Medrash writes that Adam and his wife sat crying next to the corpse of their son Abel. Velo yadu ma la'asot. They did not know what to do. What do you do with a dead body? No one instructed them. There was no funerals before. So what do you do at a funeral? What do you do with someone dead? I remember when I came to Seattle, so they needed a minyan for a funeral. They're talking 94. Came to the cemetery, and there was a Jew which came out from the former Soviet Union, a Russian Jew. And at that time, the Seattle Burial Society, or Chevra Kadisha, part of their, I guess, arrangements with the families was that when you bought a plot, you got the burial, you got the rabbi officiating, the family got a big candle, a 7-day candle, and also a book. A book, every funeral got a book. The book was written by Dr. Norman Lamb, called The Jewish Way of Mourning. So I'm at this funeral, and this is a few Jews speaking Yiddish and just came out of Russia. One of them was a Yid that used to live in our community, came to our shul. Many of us remember him, the Mayor Danziger. So the Mayor is asking me, what is the book? What's this book? So I tell him, this is a book that teaches you what to do when you come back from the funeral, other funeral. He says, a book? What do you mean? You come home, you sit on a small chair, you change your leather shoes, you cover the mirrors like, what do you, he looked at me like, who needs a book? Why is there a book of that? You know, you have to explain to Mayor, you were born in the old shtetl. So you do what you saw, and they did what they saw. This is called tradition. But when you live in Seattle, and maybe the people who are being buried is not always people which they saw, our tradition traditionally we observed the so-called the Shiva days. So they need a book, and that's what Dr. Norman Lamb did, Rabbi Dr. Norman Lamb, that he wrote a book. So we should know and read, so we know what to do. So that's a story that always comes back to me from the early years in the early funerals. So anyway, so the Medrash says Adam and Eve are sitting and they're watching their son and they're crying. So they're crying, bochim, and they don't know what are we doing. Passed by a crow. You know, a crow is orev, a bird. And the crow, which also had a friend crow died, came and descended on the ground, started digging, whether with its beak or with its feet, whatever it was, started digging up the ground, picked up the crow, the dead crow with his beak, his teeth, with his mouth, and lowered into the ground, and then quickly covering the earth. So Adam looked at that and he said, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. And they imitated the crow, and they did the same. That's what the Medrash says. And the Rebbe is elaborating on it. And one of the things that he says is, what was the issue, what to do with Abel? Adam was already told, you came from earth and you will return to earth. That's in this week's Parsha. Will return to earth. So you know that the body gets returned to earth, and what happens afterwards is got to figure out. But you have to do what you have to do once it's dead. Why is he sitting around there from, why is he sitting around there and wondering and crying and not knowing what's going to happen, how it's going to happen? And this is what is discussing in different ideas. But one of the very interesting things he says is, listen to that. What he says is, they looked at the death of their son, especially the way he died by his brother. They sat on the floor crying, not just crying, what do we do with him? It wasn't just an issue about Hebel. They were crying for themselves. What are we doing now? Meaning, is there any reason to live any longer? But that's what's going to happen. That's what people do to each other. So why am I alive? What's the purpose of living? If that could happen, then we have 4 people, a small community of 4 people, and the one is ready to take away the life, especially the one is a brother. from the same mother, from the same father, from the same community, from the same race. Sephardic, Ashkenazic, whatever they were, Hasidic, Litvish, Vesish, I don't know what other origin was. And yet, exactly, to go and to kill him. So Adam and Eve are sitting down and they're wondering, it doesn't seem that life is worth living. And they were kind of sitting and expressing their hopelessness. And then what they saw, there is something called acting kindly. Despite the darkness, they saw comes a crow, sees a friend crow lying dead on the ground, doesn't let the dead crow just fly and decay in the heat of the desert, picks it up, gets involved, digs a grave, puts him in, covers it with earth. And when they saw that, they realized, okay, there is a lot of darkness in the world. There's going to be a lot of darkness. But it's worth it for these shiny moments, for these very exceptional times that people, animals are going to be extra kind to each other, that makes life all worth it. The Rebbe connected it with the way the Jewish name for the burial society is. You know what the funeral homes are called in every language traditionally? Chesed shel emet. True acts of kindness. What is a true act of kindness? Is there a fake act of kindness and there's a true act of kindness? The Rebbe said, in every act of kindness, the person that you were acting kind to has a chance, most of the times you're going to get a thank you. Not now, maybe later. The person who is dead and you took care of is not saying thank you. This is called truthful kindness, sincere kindness. You're not getting a thank you, you're not getting no appreciation. You did it because this is what we do. And this is called chesed shel emes. This is true. And that's what he learned. That's what he learned. That's what Adam learned. And from who did he learn it? They learned it from the crow, which according to the Talmud, the crow is considered the cruelest of the birds. The Talmud talks about the crow that he does not sustain his little kids. And God himself has to take care of them. That's why we say in davening, Livnei Orev Asher Yikrau, for the children of the crow who are calling. In the Alleluia, it mentions the descendants of the crow, which are calling to me. Why are the descendants of what? The descendants of the dog and the descendants of the chesreis, of the cat? No, that's the crows, because the crows are not being supported by the mother crow, but the father crow.
I disagree.
I'm telling you, well, you know crows.
They've done studies.
Who did it?
The young, even at the University of Washington, the young crows stay with parents for several years.
Okay, let's bring out the studies.
First 2 days before they get their feathers, the parents don't recognize them. Once they start to get the feathers, then they recognize those initial days.
It says, exactly, the Talmud says, because they look at them, they see their mother being black. No, what did it say?
The newborns are white.
Oh, white, exactly. That's what the Talmud says. The newborns are white, and until they turn dark, they don't recognize them and they don't want to take care of them. And God, exactly, that's exactly what the Gemara says. Right? That's exactly what the Gemara says. That's exactly what the Gemara says in Eruvin. And then, so the first, they have to be provided. And the Talmud actually goes into specifics what they eat.
Yes.
God makes worms of the poop, whatever, the whole system, which is specially designed in a way that it should serve as a nutrition for the crow. So the crow is called the cruel bird. And being the one who is called the cruel bird, yet got involved in what? In being kind. Got involved in Chevra Kadisha. Got involved in bury. So that is what we learn from the crow. That's what gave Adam kind of the inspiration to see that there is hope. God willing, there is hope. There's going to be hope. This is the void, and obviously, in a week like this week, when we are so devastated to see so much darkness and evil, and I'm sure there's a lot of questions. Not only technical questions. How did it happen? What happened to the wall? What happened to the border? What happened to the cameras? I'm sure there's going to be those questions too. Someone's going to have to give some very, very difficult answers. I don't know if I'm going to be able to see it in my lifetime. It can take many years to come up with the answers. But that's not the point. The answers are not going to bring back the people who are dead and the people who are suffered, etc. But at the same time, what we are also wondering is, so where are we heading from here? Is it going to get darker? Is it all worth it? And the answer is yes. This is exactly the answer that Adam was given. You have to remember, we're studying Bereshit. The Talmud tells us in Tractate Sota, the Talmud says, what is the first story that we have in Bereshit? Besides creation, God created a world, and He created animals. He created this is all those gating. What first activity does anybody?
Naming the animal?
What?
Naming the animal?
That was Adam.
That was Adam. He told them what they could eat, what they couldn't eat.
Do what he did, not what he said. You're almost there. You're almost in the area.
And maybe he rested and didn't do anything. That was
Tell you what he did. So he brought,
Came to visit.
Condolences.
he made them clothes. They realized they are naked. And God went, and what did he do? Look
He
at the
made them
verse.
clothes after they had,
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
but
But
they made
that's
them
the
clothes
first
after they
activity.
had their fig leaf.
The first activity is that
It's not for him, maybe.
by you see it on verse well, right? Who are you? Right? So he gave him the cures.
He's getting to that.
7, chapter 37.
Where is it?
37.
What?
37.
3:7. What does it say?
They sewed together fig leaves to make themselves aprons.
No, but after, what did God make? This is what they make for themselves.
And then he made it for,
So they got
he
the
made them
needles
the
and
clothes
apples.
after he asked where they were.
Here, verse 21. Vayas Hashem Elikim le'odom ule'ishtoi kois noisoi leather jackets. Vayalbishem. It's on verse 21,
21.
chapter 3.
Where'd the leather come from? From
Of skin. It says
Abel's.
skin.
Abel's.
It come from
It
God.
says God Almighty
God,
made for Adam and for his wife skin
skin tight.
skin garments, garments of animal skins, and he clothed them. They were just having like a little fig leaf, like in the pictures, just to cover their nakedness. But to have a normal, not only he gave him a nice leather jacket. This is like, that is
So they
the
had children after this happened. They had daughters after this happened.
They had
They
children.
Continued to have more
In
children.
tradition, they don't think about in Medrash about, but at this point, when they're getting dressed, they're still not kids. Kids is chapter 4.
No, but they felt the life was worth living, and then they had
Exactly.
Yeah,
But
Yes,
the
they
point
did.
is that
120 or years
God,
later.
the first thing that God does, He gets them dressed. But the Talmud makes this observation. This is the first activity we find God doing. What is the last activity that God does that we read just buried Moses? So we have two activities. One is dressing Adam and Eve, and the second one is burying burying Moses. So the Torah begins as the Talmud with an act of
Kindness.
Torah ends with an act.
Kindness.
Why? Because that's what Torah is all about. Torah is all really ultimately about the ability to be kind to somebody else who is in need for something. That's what Torah is. Torah is called Torah's Chesed. Torah's Chesed. Now we have a song that some of us read it every Friday night. It says, Torah's Chesed al Shoina. It praises the woman of valor by saying that the Torah of kindness is on her tongue. The Talmud says, what is Torah of kindness? For the Talmud, it refers to the academy of Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Ila'i. What happened in that Torah academy, in that school, that they were practicing Torah's Chesed? Says the Gemara, because the students of the school of Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai were extremely poor, and they managed to cover 6 students with one sheet, one gown, and study. Usually, when you have 2, 3, imagine 6, cover themselves with one blanket. One schleps here, the other one schleps here. There's no way that 6 people will figure out how to have them all covered, because everybody feels I'm not
Warm enough.
And here, 6 of the students, because they were very poor, they had no money to buy clothes, they couldn't afford it. So they were having like this big pieces of cloth, and 6 of them covered themselves in one and studied. So the Gemara says that is an expression of Torah's chesed. This is a Torah which is associated with kindness. They were able to forgive each other, to give place for the other, to allow each other's presence to come in and be a part of their presence. And that is what we call the Torah of Chesed. So the truth is, this is what it is. You can see even now, there is such a outpour of support. I never get a call. Can I give you money? Who calls me that I can give you money for? Yes, I make a fundraiser. Thank God. Very nice. Responding. There's a holiday. There's a yard site. There is occasions that people feel that it's important to contribute and they benefit from the cause. So why not? Just to get cold calls from people that I don't really know them. I can't open my messages now. I get a call from this lady from Kenmore, Rabbi Kenmore, by Kirkland, behind Kirkland. Says, Rabbi, are you collecting any money for Israel? What can I give? So I referred to a organization that I know is going to do something right. Then somebody else, then I get it from a Gentile, I email. When I saw that, I said, you know what, I'm going to make a link if anybody wants to do it. Then I'm going to give it all together to different organizations doing different things. I got calls from community people. One wants to give for hamlets, for, what do you call it? Helmets, I'm sorry. Helmets for volunteers or for soldiers. One is collecting for tzitzit. for tefillin, one is collecting for food, one is collecting. There's so many organizations, and here my father sends me an email today asking me if I'm involved in that. What happened was they had a plane going to Israel, and those people are going to join the army. People who were required to go back, but there was no planes available, so somebody had to organize something. And the kids were asked, "How do you made it here?" And they said that the Seattle Jewish community sponsored our trip. My father says that you. I said, I'm not aware. I don't know. There is a lot of different organizations in Seattle, but that's what they published, and I got the clip, the newspaper that says that somewhere in the Seattle Jewish community, apparently there's somebody or some group or some organization which sponsored helping those young men who are going to fight to be able to go back to Israel, to get the tickets, to get. So there is so much chesed, and this is the biggest revenge to those Nazis. In addition to the fact that they almost get perished off the world immediately, but meantime, while they live, I'm also happy to see, and I hope they watch the outpour of kindness which happens in the world, Jewish world, together with the non-Jewish world. Everybody is together supporting, doing what they can to support, whether it's with money or even with words. My wife just showed me before I left the house. She says, Mordechai, you have to watch this clip. I don't go on Facebook. I don't go on Instagram. I don't have time and I don't have patience for all this. She shows me a clip of a video of a journalist, a non-Jewish journalist. She says I'm not Jewish, and she describes what is going on, meaning how evil it is, what happened. And she talks about how she was following other journalists, the situation in Pittsburgh, the Tree of Life synagogue, and the way she learned about the idea of Kaddish. She says something very interesting. She says, I love the idea of Kaddish, not only because the comfort and the idea that we talk about, whatever, the of God, because I learned when I was following in my reporting the situation in Pittsburgh, I learned that Kaddish needs to be said amongst a community. You don't just sit alone home and you say Kaddish. And I realized that that's what Judaism is. They know that when it comes to mourning, you don't let the person alone. You come, you make a minyan. Because if he needs to say Kaddish, he's going to need to have a minyan. And that's a gentle woman. She actually spoke very beautifully. By the way, if interested, you can ask my wife to send you that link. At the same time, there is unfortunately a lot of sorrow, even in our meats community over here. People, I know a woman here that the uncle, 75 years old, was shot to death, and her aunt showed me the picture is on a motorcycle in Gaza. That's the only evidence they have that the aunt was alive on Saturday. And you see a 75-year-old woman being schlepped on a motorcycle in Gaza. The aunt. She lives in Bellevue.
But to put a little downward twist on it, as much as the voices that are being supportive of Israel, there's still a lot of silence out there.
Unfortunately, not only silence, I saw some bad video here. My sister sent me from Australia a clip. I couldn't believe there's such a thing even in existence today. The way they spoke, the way they demonstrated, the words they used against Jews. This is Nazis. Yes, 100%. But I'm trying to concentrate on the good, and we should look at the good because that's what the time calls for. And no need. It's not what we saw, what we heard. And if we want to continue living like Adam and Eve, to continue life, look on the crow. Look even on the crow. Whatever gives you hope for a normal, healthy, kind society is what we should be finding our support. And without any further ado, I want to wish you all thank you for coming to class. Come join us in shul. this Shabbat. We will have a Kiddush in honor of Jonas, called to the Torah, Ufruf,
Ooh,
and wishing you all the best. Anybody wants to say something here, you can say. What? What is it? Hello. Arnold, you okay? Hello. Can't hear anybody. Okay. So we'll see each other B'ezrat Hashem on Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. I don't.